Okay, in this mini tutorial I'm going to demonstrate to you how to make a model of the brachial plexus using pipe cleaners. Now, pipe cleaners are an exceptionally good medium for this kind of task, mainly because they tend to come in very vivid colours. For example, there's a yellow one here. They can be bent and twisted into all sorts of shapes, and they can also be twisted and plaited together. And that's really important if you're making the brachial plexus, because as you know, a lot of the nerves in the brachial plexus do cross and twist around one another. So I think that pipe cleaners are a really good way of doing this. Now, the colours that you select, it doesn't really matter which colours you choose. My only piece of advice would be that you use colours which contrast well against one another. So in this case, I've selected pink to represent the C5 root, blue to represent C6, white to represent C7, orange to represent C8, and black to represent T1. You want lots of contrast between the colours so that you can chart the course of the different routes through the brachial plexus to their ultimate destinations. So we're going to build the plexus up from left to right, starting with the roots and finishing by forming the terminal branches on the right hand side. It of course is a diagrammatical representation of the brachial plexus, although you should be able to deform the finished model so that it does resemble something more like the real situation which you should have seen in the dissecting room. So let's start off by creating the roots of the brachial plexus. And you might note that I've got different numbers of the different colours. So I've got 3 pink, 4 blue, 3 white, 3 orange, and 3 black. Now, I'm only doing 5 major nerves. If I were doing more nerves, I would need more of these individual colours. But you'll see the rationale for why I've chosen, say, 4 blue as opposed to 3 blue a little later on. It's basically related to how many of the nerves take a contribution from C6 in this case. And in this case, only 4 of our 5 nerves have a C6 contribution. 3 of our 5 nerves have a C5 contribution, 3 have a C7 contribution, 3 have a C8 contribution, and 3 have a T1 contribution. So if you were adapting this model to add on additional nerves, you might want to have additional pipe cleaners of each colour. So we'll start off by creating the C5 root. So I'm just going to pick up our 3 C5 pipe cleaners. I'm going to hold them all at the end here like this, and I'm going to twist all 3 around one another for about 3 centimetres. So we're going to twist these all around one another for a distance of approximately 3 centimetres. And you can see there that I have created the C5 root composed of 3 pink pipe cleaners. So there's the C5 root. I can now do the same thing to create the C6 root. So I pick up my 4 C6 pipe cleaners and I twist them all around one another for about 3 centimetres. So that's about the same as the C5. Okay, so I've made the C6 root. Now let's make the C7 root, and I'm going to twist the white ones for the same distance. Offer that up. And of course it's important that all of your individual segments of the brachial plexus are the same length so that they can match up with one another when we start to weave them amongst themselves. So there we've made our C8 root, and finally in black our T1 root, so twisting around. Okay, so now you can see that I have created the C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1 roots. So now what we need to do is to create the trunks. So we need to remember a little bit of the anatomy of the brachial plexus. So you should recall that the superior trunk is formed by the coalescence of the C5 and C6 roots. You should recall that the middle trunk is just a continuation of the C7 root, and you should recall that the inferior trunk is the coalescence of the C8 and T1 roots. So all that we need to do to form the trunks is to wrap around these two pairs. So let's form the superior trunk, and what we need to do here is once again twist this next 3 centimetre section of C5 root together. So we'll twist this C5 root section together for about 3 centimetres once more, and we'll do the same for the C6 root, so twist this together for another 3 centimetres. And then to form the superior trunk, all that we need to do is twist these two around one another, like this. So now you can see that we have formed the superior trunk made up of the C5 and C6 roots. As we've said before, the middle trunk is the continuation of the C7 root, so let's simply twist the C7 root for a further 3 centimetres. So hold it there at that point where we finished and twist that for a further 3 centimetres, like that. Now we'll do the same for the inferior trunk, so let's continue our C8 root for 3 centimetres. And let's continue our T1 root for 3 centimetres. So now that we've created a continuation of the C8 and T1 roots, we can twist those together like we did to form the superior trunk. So now we're forming the inferior trunk. Okay. So where do we stand at this point? Well, we've got the C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1 roots. C5 and C6 are coming together to form the superior trunk. C7 is continuing to form the middle trunk. C8, T1 are coming together to form the inferior trunk. Now, the next segment of the brachial plexus after the trunks, as you should know, are the divisions. And we have anterior and posterior divisions. And the interesting thing about the divisions is that the posterior divisions all contribute to extensor muscles. They all supply extensor muscles. So what I'm going to do initially is I'm going to make all of the posterior divisions and bring those together to form the posterior cord. So, in order to create the posterior divisions, what we need to do is we need to bring one black and one orange strand up from the inferior trunk and twist those together, And this is forming the posterior division coming off of the inferior trunk. All right, so here we've twisted one black and one orange together coming off of the inferior trunk to form the posterior division of the inferior trunk. We'll leave these others just to one side for the time being. The middle trunk only sends one strand to the posterior division. So this is the single strand from the middle trunk, which is going to go as a posterior division. And the superior trunk sends two blue and two pink strands down to form a posterior division. So there's two pink, and two blue strands which are coming down to form a posterior division from the superior trunk. So let's twist those round for 3 centimeters. Also. So now we've got our 3 posterior divisions. Here's the posterior division coming from the inferior trunk. Here's the posterior division coming from the middle trunk. And here's the posterior division coming from the superior trunk. So now what we need to do is to wrap these around one another in order to form the posterior chord. So this is a slightly tricky part. So we just bring them all together like this. All right, so we brought them all together like this. And now we're going to try and form the posterior chord. So those are all the posterior divisions. And we're going to try and form the posterior chord. So we're going to twist for a couple of centimeters here like this. Okay. And there you can see what we've done is we've brought together the 3 posterior divisions from the 3 trunks, and we've formed the posterior chord here. So there's the posterior chord. Now, what's the major nerve which is coming from the posterior chord? Well, that of course is the radial nerve, and the radial nerve takes contributions from all of the roots. So if we're going to build the radial nerve from this posterior chord, we need one of each colour to go into it. All right? So we need one blue, one pink, one orange, one black, and one white. So those 5 filaments we can twist together to form the radial nerve. All right, so there we have formed the radial nerve coming from the posterior chord, formed by the coalescence of the 3 posterior divisions. What's left? Well, what's left is C5 and C6 here, which are going to form the axillary nerve. So this here is the axillary nerve coming from the posterior chord. So let's just lay this out flat a little bit in order to show you where we're at. So at this point we have created C5, C6, C7, C8 and T1 roots. We have created superior, middle and inferior trunks. And so far we have made the posterior divisions. So here's the posterior division coming from the superior trunk. This is the posterior division coming from the middle trunk. And this is the posterior division coming from the inferior trunk. Those 3 posterior divisions came together to form the posterior chord here. And the posterior cord went on to form the radial nerve, but there was also the important axillary nerve which branched off. So now we're in a position to create some additional cords. And I think what we're best off doing is to work our way inferiorly, superiorly. So let's work our way up from the bottom. So now let's form the anterior division from the inferior trunk. Now the anterior division from the inferior trunk contains both C8 and T1 fibres. So for about 3 centimetres we're going to twist together all of these black and oranges. Okay. So there we've twisted together all of those black and orange pipe cleaners to form the medial cord. So that's the that's not the medial cord. We have formed the anterior division coming from the inferior trunk. Okay. And we're now in a position to form the medial cord. And all we're going to do once again is twist this for a slightly greater distance. So that's the anterior division, and the medial cord is just a continuation of the anterior division coming from the inferior trunk. And at this point here we've formed the medial cord. Now we can form the ulnar nerve, and that's just one black and one orange which we're going to twist together, and this is going to be the ulnar nerve. Okay. So this is the ulnar nerve, formed from black and orange, which are C8 and T1. So we've made the ulnar nerve. Furthermore, we can also take from the medial cord the C8 and T1 contributions to the median nerve. So let's twist those together as well. So this is going to go on to form the median nerve ultimately. Okay, but we'll just twist these all together. So now we've dealt with the anterior division of the inferior trunk. We've created the medial cord. We've created the ulnar nerve. And we've created the C8-T1 contribution to the median nerve. So next, what we need to do is to form the lateral cord from the anterior divisions of the superior and middle trunks. So this here is the superior trunk made from C5, C6. Let's create the anterior division of the superior trunk, which is going to be formed by twisting together all of these, the 2 blue and 1 pink. So here we're forming the anterior division of the superior trunk. And now let's form the anterior division of the middle trunk, and you can see here this was the posterior division of the middle trunk. Twist these 2 whites together to form the anterior division of the middle trunk. Okay. Now the anterior divisions of the superior and middle trunks come together to form the lateral cord. So we need to just twist the anterior divisions together to form the lateral cord. That's what I'm going to do here. Do that for once again about 3 centimetres. So here we formed the lateral cord by twisting together the anterior divisions from the superior and middle trunks. So we form the lateral cord. Now, a major branch from the lateral cord is, of course, the musculocutaneous nerve. And the musculocutaneous nerve contains C5 and C6 and a little bit of C7. So we need a pink, we need a blue, and we need a white. All right, get those others out the way, twist these all together. And now what we are making is the musculocutaneous nerve. Okay, so this here, which we've just created, this is the musculocutaneous nerve containing C5, C6 and C7. This part here, the C6 and C7, we're going to twist together because these are going to go on to contribute to the median nerve. All right, so we twist those together like that. We've got a little bit of excess that we can just tuck behind. But what this is going to do is this is going to go on to contribute to the median nerve. And it's going to coalesce with part of the medial cord. All right? And remember that the median nerve is sitting anterior to the radial nerve. So we need to put that on top. And here we're forming the median nerve. So let's have a look what we've done. Let's lay this flat, adjust it slightly so it looks a bit prettier, and just talk through what we have created. All right. Obviously it's harder to show you in 2 dimensions than it is in 3. So we've got C5, C6, C7, C8, T1 roots coming together to form superior, middle and inferior trunks. Now all of the posterior divisions, here's one posterior division, another and another, come together to form the posterior cord, which is at the tip of my index finger there. So there's the posterior cord. And the posterior cord has 2 major branches. So I'll just need to lift this up. We have the radial nerve and the axillary nerve. So there's the radial and axillary coming from the posterior cord. The lateral cord is formed from the anterior divisions from the superior trunk and the middle trunk. So here are the anterior divisions from the superior and middle trunks coming together to form the lateral cord. And the major branch of the lateral cord is the musculocutaneous nerve here. In addition, the lateral cord sends a contribution, the blue and white we can see at the tip of my finger, sends a contribution to the median nerve. Looking inferiorly, we have got the inferior trunk here, which we've already dealt with its posterior division, but its anterior division continues to become the medial cord. And a major branch of the medial cord is the ulnar nerve here, containing C8 and T1 fibers. And in addition, the medial cord sends a branch which joins with a branch from the lateral cord to form the median nerve. Now, what I think is the real power of this model is that you can follow the colours through to their terminal branches. So, for example, immediately upon inspection of this model, you can see that the median nerve contains white, orange, blue and black pipe cleaners, but no pink pipe cleaners. So the median nerve is made from C6 through T1, but doesn't contain a C5 contribution. Conversely, you can see that the ulnar nerve only has black and orange pipe cleaners, so therefore it's only made from C8 and T1 fibers. Or you might note that the radial nerve here has got all of the colours represented and therefore is composed from C5 through T1, i.e. all of the roots. So I think you're going to need to watch this video a few times and have your own pipe cleaners in front of you in order to make your own model. You obviously need to do some background reading first because I haven't spent the time to explain all of the terms which I'm using. But I'd strongly recommend that you build your own model. Keep it with you, and that will really make sure that you know the brachial plexus very well. As your studies become more advanced, you can of course add additional pipe cleaners to this model in order to show additional branches from the brachial plexus. But I think it's important that you understand this basic version first. Okay, thank you.